Hi, I'm Chris Magra. I'm the director of the Center for the Study of Tennesseans and War here at the University of Tennessee. It's our mission to research, preserve, and share the stories of Tennesseans who've been involved in wars. And we're privileged to have Marcel Holman with us today. Thank you very much for coming in, sir.
It's my pleasure.
Marcel is a veteran of the Vietnam War, and we're going to talk about his story today. So can you tell us how long have you lived in Tennessee?
Pretty much all my life. Mm-hmm. I was born in New York, and my dad was in the Navy, and he was stationed in the New York area. Mm-hmm. So I was born there in 1950, and shortly after that we moved back to the south to Memphis.
Mm-hmm. And I remember you telling me before that you had quite a few family members who have served.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that, about your family and their service?
Sure. Starting from the earliest that I can recall, my uncle Jones, Charlie Jones, on my mother's side, he was enlisted in the Army. He was an Army veteran, and my dad was in the Navy, and he was a World War II veteran, Willie Lee Holman, and several of my cousins and all relatives that were in the service. Charlie Jones, both his sons were Army veterans, and Charlie Jr. served in Vietnam, and then my cousin Michael Anderson, John Michael Anderson, he was in Vietnam a year before I was, and another cousin, Lafayette Carroll, was a Navy officer, and he was post-Vietnam. And my daughter, she's Navy veteran, and she served on a ship. Well, actually, she was a subtender. And so my other cousins, some other cousins were served. Some served in Vietnam, and some just served in the military in particular.
That's a good family record of service to this country.
Yeah.
So your family moved from New York down to Memphis.
Right.
Do you remember what year that was?
Well, that would have been 1951. I was probably 1 year old when we moved. We were he was stationed in the New York, Boston area, so it was more that our basic family was in the Memphis, northern Mississippi area already, so it was more of a factor of coming back home, pretty much. Yeah.
And grew up in Memphis?
Grew up in Memphis, yes.
When did you decide to join the military?
Well,
was this something that you wanted to do, intended to do, and volunteered to serve in your teenage years?
Well, so I was in the ROTC, Army ROTC, but I was already in college. So
Where was that at? In Memphis?
Well, yes, yes. So I was drafted because I had they had the lottery and my number was low, and I was serving. I was at the University of Memphis. It was Memphis State, now University of Memphis, as a freshman.
What year did you arrive there at Memphis State?
That was 1969.
Okay.
And so that was a year, well, the same year I was drafted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You arrived there at Memphis State, enrolled in the ROTC program, and were drafted in the same year?
Well, no, I didn't. The ROTC program was high school.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yes.
Gotcha. Yes.
Yeah.
So RTC in high school,
Yeah.
then went to Memphis State.
Yes. Memphis State had a Air Force ROTC program, but I wasn't officially enrolled as a Air Force cadet. I was just taking classes as a student.
Yeah. But in your mind, you're thinking about the Air Force?
Well, no, I wasn't thinking about it, but it just happened to be the armed forces of the university that was most prevalent.
That's what they had. Yeah. Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah.
And so you're just a student, and then you're drafted.
Yes.
You're a student at Memphis State for 1 year,
Yes.
thereabouts.
Well,
and-
yeah, I was a student, but my draft came in the summer, so I was touring with my band, music group, and then we were playing with Peaches and Herb, the band group Peaches and Herb, and when I got the draft notice, I was in Washington D.C., so I flew back for the draft appointment, and my selective service officer, she told me that, since my number was really a low number, that there was a possibility that I could get drafted, but it wasn't. It was during the semester that I had my draft notice, but I was drafted in the summer between semesters.
In 1969.
Yes. Was it maybe even 1970?
Okay.
The summer of 1970.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what did you think about the draft?
I didn't think. I thought it was just kind of just something that I didn't pay much attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
I just, I wasn't really focused on the workings of it or anything. I just knew that since my number was low, that there was a possibility that I would be drafted.
Yeah.
And I didn't really think much of the process. I thought it was a randomized sampling that they did, and all the selected, males of the appropriate age, and that was, I just thought it was random, so it was not much I could say about, the process.
Were you thinking about the military and joining the military anyway, or were you pretty serious about your music career and the band and touring around for these performances and not really thinking about the military?
Yes, I was. I wasn't. I was thinking more of my music career than the military. I hadn't made any direct plans to join, but I thought, well, if I was going to join, maybe I would follow my dad's footstep, and I would have probably joined the Navy. Yeah, that was would have been my thought about it. But the Army is I was drafted, so the Army, that's the branch that you usually. Yeah. That's it, the main branch.
So, did you have any thoughts about Vietnam? Did you have any thoughts about the U.S. involvement in a war halfway around the world? What are you thinking in 1969, 1970 about those kind of things?
Well, the information that was the news media was the only things that we had. Then several of my high school peers had joined or they were in the war. Maybe a couple of them maybe had one Marine and maybe an Army had actually were casualties of Vietnam. So I kind of had an idea of, the seriousness of the conflict, but I wasn't thinking one way or the other whether I was gonna be involved in it. I did know
you were caught up in your music and thinking that was your life.
Well, that was pretty much my major ambition at the time, and it was very interesting time in Memphis music because there were a lot of things that were going on that I was involved in.
And so you kind of got thrust into the Vietnam War with the draft. It kind of took you from this career in music for a little bit anyway, and put you on a little different track.
Yeah, that would be. Yeah.
Yes, and were you? How did you handle that? Did you think to yourself, well, I'm going to get back to doing what I'm doing afterwards, so this is all right?
Right.
I wanted to serve the military anyway, so this is all right? Or were your bandmates upset? Were you kind of upset?
So actually,
the draft?
There were two of us that got drafted and were involved. Two of the band members, 2 out of 6. So we served. I think I was maybe first, but we served around the same period.
Yeah.
And the trumpet player Paul Hill, he was involved in the military band, but he went to South Korea. So I was the one of the two of us that went to Vietnam. But yeah, well, once I was drafted, to me it was just a matter of doing the best I could in the military while I was there, So and before we get into the military service and your experience in Vietnam, is there anything that you wanted to speak to on the civil rights side of it, going into the war, about the draft, Memphis in particular in the 60s? Yeah. So I was involved in the civil rights issues in Memphis as a band member and just as a citizen too. So the major thrust was that our band was playing like for campaigns, like to for example Harold Ford for Senate. So our band campaigned for him around Memphis when he was running, and he won his Senate seat. And we played pretty much the whole community. We campaigned every Saturday. We were on a flatbed truck playing music, and he was like doing his rounds in the communities and talking to the community people while we played. So that was one of the things that we were involved in, as well as the Martin Luther King. The march for the striking garbage workers, and all of starting before during the week of his assassination. Then there was a march the previous week, and then he came back, and that was the week that he was assassinated. But yeah, we were involved in all of that.
And that was a part of your life, in addition to the music, that you were pretty serious about, that the draft kind of again put you on a different track.
Well, yeah, it was kind of integral in a way. The music was a big part of the civil rights activities in the community.
And so you're drafted.
Right. Yeah.
You're in the Army now.
Right.
And where do you do your basic training?
Fort Polk, Louisiana.
Okay.
So that was one of the things. It was interesting because Fort Polk was, in hindsight, it was as close, I guess, to the United, territorially in the United States, where you would be considering having a tropical climate to work in. I mean, it's south. It would have been different if we were, if we were trained in Fort Dix, New Jersey, or somewhere north. But it was similar in the summer, spring, and fall months to what we may have been anticipating in the country, in Vietnam, as a tropical area. So that was my basic training, Fort Polk, and then my military, my MOS was 11 Bravo, so I was infantry. So my AIT, advanced infantry training, was in Fort Polk also. So I just stayed there for the entire training, and then I had I guess a week to leave before orders for Vietnam. So that was,
and this is in 1970.
This was 1970. The training ended by the end of 1970. So my tour of Vietnam started in January of 1971.
Yep. And I imagine you're talking to your family members this whole time in 1970. What are they thinking? What are they saying about you being deployed and going overseas to Vietnam?
So, and this is a part that's part of the Special Collections Project too.
Yes, the UT Library did a project on Marcel Holman, and we'll include a link to that project for sure.
Yeah, so the music that you hear on the Special Collections Project is a group that my aunt founded. Her brother Charlie Jones is who I mentioned, who was Army, but she founded a group called the Harps of Melody. And the Harps of Melody had written a song that was Bring the Boys Home from Vietnam. So that music at the introduction of the Special Collections Project is the a cappella group, the Harps of Melody, performing that recording of Bring the Boys Home from Vietnam. And at the time, her son, John Michael, was in Vietnam. He was serving in Vietnam at that time. He served 68, 69.
Yep.
And I was there the following year. But at the time, the release of that song, he was serving in Vietnam, as well as Charlie Jr. was probably serving just shortly after that too, or somewhere within that time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I imagine your family members were concerned about you.
Oh yes.
And I imagine that your family members with military experience were a little proud of you being in the Army. Kind of a mixed emotions.
Our family is basically pro-military. Many members joined, and then I just happened to be drafted, but many other members just joined because that was their duty. They wanted to serve, and it could have been that I think if for example, the University of Memphis State, when I was at Memphis State, had they had a Navy military program rather than an Air Force, I may have gotten involved in that aspect of it.
Yeah. So, when my brother was deployed, he was deployed to South Korea and to the Middle East, And both times I was just worried about my brother.
Yeah.
And I imagine your family members are just worried about you. But the Vietnam War is a different kind of war, and it was a different time in American history with a lot of things going on the home front, and a different, like I said, different kind of war. So imagine your family members are having a complex mix of reactions to you being deployed and going over to Vietnam.
Yeah. So the speaking on the climate of the American community, it was during that time when the Kent State incident, and so if you're playing music in different venues around the country, you either, I mean, you could just play your music, but a lot of times you would maybe have some thoughts about, was this a just war? Should we be there? Or you would at least have contacts with people that may have been protesting the war, or when you had a concert, a lot of different elements that came into play.
Yep.
During the late '60s.
Yeah.
Is when so it was unavoidable if you were going to be in the public eye that you had to, and you didn't necessarily have to make a stand pro or con about the war, but the issue was there. It was pretty much there.
Yeah.
And we played a lot of colleges and universities as a band. So in the university community, it was they were even more active than just your normal community. They had either strong concepts about whether we should be there or whether we shouldn't be there, or so they on campuses you would have that type of interaction.
Yeah. Did you have a strong take on the war, or did you just kind of go with the flow? You're in the military now, so you're going to make the best of it.
Well, originally, so I would have been basically a conscientious objector. So I wouldn't have. My main thought was that if I go to war, I'm gonna have to kill somebody, and that was one thing that I didn't want to do. But speaking of family members, older family members, they were saying, you may or may not have to do that. Just whatever to do, just go ahead and do what you need to do, and pray to God that you won't have to take a life. And so that was kind of what I did. I just kind of said, okay, I'm gonna trust that I won't have to actually take a life. But my military occupation was I got the one occupation that was like MOS, that meant like you're gonna be like on the ground, and you're gonna be wherever you are, you're gonna be like the person that's gonna as a grunt that's gonna be either going into the bush and disabling mines or whatever, or point man on in a armored unit. So a lot of the things that were pointing to my engagement meant that that's probably what might happen. And my military skills were so I was pretty much at the top of my basic training class in terms of physicality. I'd say would be top 5 individuals out of my basic training battalion. So and then in my infantry training, I was qualified. I qualified high in pretty much all the arms. You know, small arms, heavy arms, demolition, just you know, anti-tank. All of those things were pretty much like good for me in terms of my record.
Yeah.
You know, so I just assumed that, you know, that's probably what I'd be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you deployed then to Vietnam in 1971.
That's correct. Yeah, January of '71.
And how long were you over there?
I did a year.
Okay.
To it.
Yeah.
So I came in country, I think maybe January, first week of January probably, and I left in December.
And what is there anything that you want to say about your time in Vietnam, that 1 year that you were over there?
Yeah, so proud to actually, between my training, my advanced training, and then my deployment, I was home on leave for a week or two or whatever. And so one of the band members that he had just gotten out of service, and he had just come back from Vietnam, but he and I played music together in the same communities, and he saw me out, you know, at a music function, and I just mentioned that I was headed to Vietnam, and he had come back from Vietnam, and he told me that they needed musicians. They desperately needed musicians. So he said, when you go, just tell your processing officer that you are a musician, and then that may, you know, help your situation. So I did, and they needed me to perform in a music band.
Yeah, while you were over in Vietnam.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's what they in my processing end, the processing officer said that, yeah, there's just across the street there's a special services, and go talk to the sergeant there, and you know, before you finish processing, and then get back with me. So I did, and I told him who I was and what I did, and so he auditioned me right on the spot and said, yeah, we could use you in our unit. So he went back to the processing officer and said, yeah, we need this man to play. Was it
the saxophone?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it pretty much just changed my trajectory right at that point. Yeah.
And so you were playing the saxophone for the troops over in Vietnam.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you tell us what that experience was like?
Okay, that was, so we were based in a little town called, well, it was right out of Bien Hoa, between Bien Hoa and Saigon, and the band was already, they were already a band, and so I was just kind of added into the mix when I got there. So we just had you know, they would have a rehearsal or whatever that, and then we would have orders. We had orders, special orders that would take us to any air base, any fire base, any landing base in the Republic of Vietnam. So all 6 or 8 band members, whatever the number of band members, were on their special orders, and we could just like commandeer a C-130 or whatever transportation that would have been available
to travel around these different locations
to different fire bases. So it was since we were all pretty much combat ready. We were all either with different MOSs, but we were all like prepared for any possibility of combat. So we would get sent to like the fire, I think we were the Marines that were outside of Da Nang. That was one of our first assignments. We went there, and all the other little different fire bases that may have been actively receiving enemy fire, but safe enough to get transportation in and out. Well, I mean, that's a relative thing, the safety part of it. Yeah. But we never got hit. But it was still like a dangerous venture. But the troops in the field, they didn't have the opportunities to have entertainment or to come back, other than if they had a R&R, but normally the field troops that's where they were. And so we brought the entertainment to them. We came and played music, for a day or two, at their base camp, and then we would fly to another base camp, or occasionally, sometimes if it were within a radius of an area that we could safely drive, like a convoy, we would do that. But mostly it was flights, because to cover Vietnam, all from the south, central highlands, and the South China Sea, all of those areas, you basically had to. It would that was the only way you could really get to all those areas without encountering.
Now, this is something I didn't know about. I don't know about you at home, but
command military.
When you think about Vietnam and you think about the war, you don't think about musicians in the United States Army traveling around Vietnam. And I like the way you put that. It gives them an opportunity that they otherwise wouldn't have had to experience.
Oh, we got that everywhere we went.
Can you talk a little bit about what that meant to the troops over in Vietnam to have that opportunity?
It meant everything, because they were like sacrificing, everything there. We would like fly in, and as soon as we like hit the fire base, they were like proactive, and they were like firing out at the perimeter all the time, basically, So it wasn't something that they were, they were used to like looking out for either VC or NVA. That was they were like in a hot spot. Basically, it was always some activity. So when we would come in, they would basically be doing that. But they had on our agenda, they had like a certain time, like we would perform maybe like 2 shows. So the soldiers that were like out in the field, the first show, whoever was like at the base camp would probably go to the first show. But then if we did another show, a later show, then the soldiers out in the field, they were pretty much like, I guess they had, the itinerary was so that pretty much everybody that was at that camp could get an opportunity to hear some music. And I mean, that's what they all just like totally embrace it, man. It was like, man, this is the first thing that really reminds me of being back in the States. Hopefully we'll make it back, but I mean, they really appreciated that effort. And our repertoire, the songs that we played, were of pretty much covered the spectrum of American music. So like we covered like the R&B, rock, a little jazz, a little country, just a little of everything. So everybody, pretty much, no matter what their music taste was, it made them think of home. Like it was a lot of stuff like Chicago, Blood, Sweat and Tears, Grand Funk. Just all we did hard rock, everything basically. And so they let us know that they appreciated it. They really, and that was everywhere we went. They just said, this is like something to get our mind off the war for an hour or 45 minutes or whatever our concert was. And that was their reaction to it. And so we instantly appreciated the gravity of what we were doing. It was, and was it the?
Did that make the music better? Did that make you play harder?
Well, we were all relatively professional musicians to start. So as we were put together in a situation like that, it just made it just even more so music with a purpose, a true purpose. And it was appreciated. They showed us just about, I mean, we were there for like less than a day or two, but like they truly like embraced what we were doing. And a lot of times too, they made sure that the safety of the base camps were at its highest when we were there, because they were there all the time. But I mean, as we were coming into their environment, they made sure we were protected.
Yeah. Was there one moment that stood out, traveling around these different bases and playing music for so many people?
Yeah.
Was there one moment that stood out to you?
There was several, several. I think the one that was most compelling in terms of thinking about was we were scheduled to play at, and I can't remember which fire base it was, because we played at so many, but it was in the it was south of Da Nang, but it was kind of between the Central Highlands and Da Nang. It was in the northern part, and it was relatively kind of deserted. It wasn't like a lot of activity, but
still in the northern part of Vietnam.
Yeah, but the fire base was a little ways from the landing strip, and so it was the band, and there was a second lieutenant that was on the C-130, and when we landed about, I guess, maybe 2 or 3ish in the afternoon. 2,300 hours or so. So his the lieutenant's driver was waiting on him. Usually, we had in our itinerary, they said, Company C, blah blah blah, is going to pick you up. This, you'll have. They were expecting us. So I don't know, something happened, and the lieutenant's driver, he got in the Jeep, took him on to the base. The base was maybe a couple of miles out, and and so we were waiting on our transportation. It was like the 6 of us, I think it was 6 in this group, and we basically didn't travel with weapons. We just traveled we had all of our equipment, instruments, and we didn't really carry weapons because we were all non-commissioned. So there were no officers. Officers could carry a firearm in traveling, but non-coms had to have a permission to carry. So everybody in the band was non-commissioned, and so we were just kind of like at this at this landing strip. It was just a little short landing strip, just long enough for a C-130 to land. And hour went by, another hour, and like, man, we had no communication, so we didn't know. Like we started, it was a little kind of village around there, and they were watching us. They never approached us, but they were like looking at us, and we were looking at them, and we were thinking like, some could be Viet Cong, but you never know. You just looking at people. You don't really know who's who, and they're not gonna let on that they're VC. But we knew that if we had ended up after dark, and we had still been on that landing strip, then the ones somebody would have either alerted the troops in the area, or some of them could have been just observing us there. Then we didn't know that. So that was one of the moments that were
a little tense,
difficult, because we had started to figure out a plan, a battle plan, or whatever we needed to do. We knew that the fire base was too far. We could have, if we could have abandoned equipment, we may have run into the enemy trying to get to the base, and then that's another whole story. Then getting to the base, we could have been identified. We could have been casualties just by being approaching it. So it was a big issue that we kind of like discussed about, but it was getting close to the sun was setting, so it was like, oh man, we kind of went to the center of the landing strip and had all our gear like in a position to like a protective kind of position. But then just before it got dark, there was a truck came with troops to bring us, and the guy said, the lieutenant thought about you all and said they probably didn't have a way, and so I guess he had alerted somebody that, hey, you got a band out here on the airstrip, and they
want to do something about it.
It was just in time, though. Yeah. I mean, it was like just right in the nick of time. They came and and loaded us on, onto their vehicle and our equipment, and that was like we knew we had just missed probably the worst night of our life, going forward, because we hadn't we didn't even have, I'm sure the people that were observing us, they didn't know we didn't have any weapons, but we knew it, So we were trying to figure out what we could do to survive for like a night, and because that was what it was boiling down to. And when they came, that was like such a relief. It was like an angel from heaven. It's like we heard them. We heard the vehicles coming. It's like, man, this is great. And so we played for them that night out at the base, and then the next day we were out. But yeah, that was the only time we had a miscommunication with our agenda and our itinerary, because normally everything was pre-planned. They knew you're gonna have people coming, they need transportation, they need protection, blah blah blah. They only, but that was the one time that the ball was dropped somewhere, and we other than that was the biggest thing that I thought that stuck with me.
And this is 1971.
This was this was probably summer of 71.
Do you come back at the end of 71? Do you come back in 72?
I came back at December of 71.
Okay.
So I spent 11 months and some days, which was one, I guess, considered one tour of duty.
And what happened when you came home?
Well, you mean?
Yeah, there's kind of a lot when somebody comes back from Vietnam. There's kind of multiple things going on.
Well, as I was coming in country, back in country when I was coming, it was kind of a cold reception. Coming. I came in through the Air Force Base in California, but once you left the military, air bases, and coming back into the commercial air flight, because I still had like my military, all of my military uniform and all, and it was, people kind of, they didn't, they just kind of looked at you, and didn't really say much, but it was, you were just kind of on your own. Getting back from, let's say California, then I think I came in through Texas and then Memphis, so 2 or 3 commercial flights.
What was that like landing in Memphis?
It was, so nobody knew I was coming, so it was just a solitary kind of thing, but my family, I was surprising them, so like
you just knocked on the door and surprised them.
Yeah, once I got back, because I think they thought, they probably didn't know a lot about what I was doing, except they figured I was still in country, because several times I tried to call. They had these watt things where you had to transmit through towers, and sometimes a couple of times you couldn't get through, so I was like out in a communication tower in Vietnam trying to talk to somebody at home, And then they were, it was like I could hear them, they couldn't hear me or whatever. And that kind of got dicey because they thought, like something has happened. He's something. I thought I got a call, but I couldn't get through. So they were thinking that, I was either a casualty or whatever. So I just kind of stopped trying to communicate that way.
Yeah.
That way, it just kind of cut down on the. Yeah.
I'm sure they were surprised to see you.
But yeah,
when you showed up at home.
Yeah. It was a good time. It was a lot of tears and a lot of hugs and everything. It was great. And it was. I think I got home like maybe a couple of days before Christmas or something. So it was really a good
time to come home. Yeah. And are you discharged from the military at this point?
No.
Okay.
No,
I'm
just finishing my Vietnam tour, and I had to report to Texas, Fort Hood, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Once I got left, I had I don't remember the amount of days I had between Vietnam and reporting to Fort Hood, but yeah, I was reporting to Fort Hood.
Mm-hmm. And what'd you do at Fort Hood?
Basically, I was getting ready to. They had President Nixon had made a declaration of some type. If you served in Vietnam, you could have your tour of duty could end up 6 months less, because I was scheduled for my tour of duty to end in June or July of 1972, but since I went to Vietnam and served, that was truncated to February. I think it was a 6-month deferment of a 6-month deferment of your duty for serving in the war.
So then at that point, are you discharged?
February of 1972. Yeah, you're discharged from active duty, but you still have a reserve duty to I think that's 7. There was 7 years of reserve. So at that point, yeah.
So what do you do?
Active duty. I was already back in school. I just
Memphis State.
Started back where I stopped. Yeah.
The Memphis State. Yep. Okay.
And then I went for the next 4 years. I got my degree. My bachelor's.
And did the war stay with you? Were you able to leave it over in Vietnam?
Not really. But the good part was that I was able to channel a lot of the things that happened into like a positive form. So my degree was music composition theory. So for the next 3 and 4 years, I wrote music
and channeled that energy into your music.
In fact, I wrote a piece about it. I wrote a piece of music that in my senior recital was the major piece of music was a piece about it was a Vietnam requiem piece. So it really gave me an opportunity to reflect, as well as honor those like my comrades that were, because there was a lot of casualties, and then some personal close to me, and as I wasn't there directly, but as I found out like different members that like didn't make it, and what it kind of impacted me a lot.
And catch us up to between then and the present day. A lot of water under that bridge.
Yeah,
but I imagine a lot of what you've done all circles around music.
Well, not just music though, but yeah. So I'm a research scientist too.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Previously, when I was first enrolled in college, that was before I was even a music major. I was a biology major, so I was a science major, and then but at the same time I was playing music professionally. Since maybe the age of 15 is when I joined the musicians union and was traveling and playing music on a professional level around the country. So I was doing that, and at the same time, I was majoring from the start. You know how you just kind of like, well, I think I may want to major in this or that, but then I just changed to music and just did everything in music and got the music degree.
Yeah. And then went on to be a professional musician?
No, when I graduated, I ended up taking like some civil service exams. So I worked at the Internal Revenue Service I was in college when I was working at Internal Revenue Service, but I've always worked at some type of federal government. That was a seasonal employment, like during tax season. For 2 years I did that, my senior year and my junior and senior year. But then after I graduated, I got hired at the Postal Service. And so I worked as a letter carrier. And then, during that time, got married, family. So that was a stable thing for my children, and my wife, and like, oh yeah, they were great about, and so that I was still playing music occasionally, but I didn't have to rely on it as for income, for a family income, because it was you may be doing well and you may not be doing well, so
but that science bug never left you. Your interest and love for science never left you.
No, it never did.
And so at a certain point in your career, you went back to school.
Yeah, I was always still keeping up with science journals, and because my main function was to try to work on some type of cure for cancer, leukemia, cancers. And that was what I wanted to do. And I thought, well, surely they would have, gotten all of this under control. But it's instead of, getting easier, it's kind of gotten a lot more difficult and complicated. So I just, after I had worked as a carrier with the Postal Service for 28, I had 30 years of service, and then I had the decision. I could have stayed and kept working because I was healthy. I could have just worked on, but then it was like, no, it's time for you to to do this science thing, you know.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I kind of got back into that.
Yeah, and where did you do your advanced work in science?
So I was still working as a letter carrier,
Mm-hmm.
and well, most of my tour was in Memphis, but
Mm-hmm.
my last 7 or 8 years was in Knoxville, and Dr. Burns, a chemistry professor at Mississippi State, I delivered his mail, and I was talking to him. I was saying, I'm thinking about retiring, you know. And I want to, you know, maybe go into the sciences again, you know. I knew he was a chemistry. He said, you should come to Mississippi. It would be a good place to start, and so that's what I did. You know.
What year was that?
That was 2008, 2007.
Mm-hmm.
When we were talking about 2007.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was finishing that. Well, I mean, I could have been finishing, or I could have stayed, but I had enough time that they said, you know, you could either work on or you can retire, you know, or you got. I wasn't that old, but I mean, I still had 30 years, you know.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just decided, I'm gonna do that.
Mississippi, and then what comes of that?
So Mississippi, that was an Associate of Science in Biological Sciences, and then University of Tennessee, I just transferred to UT, and then when I was at UT as an undergrad, you know, like I was working on a microbiology undergrad degree, and so I ended up in cellular molecular nutrition lab, Dr. Chen's lab here.
That's a heck of a retirement.
And so when there was a program, a summer internship that was available. I mean, that was offered. Are you interested in it? I said, yeah, sure. You know, so that kind of got me really into the research aspect of it.
Yeah.
And so I finished undergraduate microbiology degree, and then the graduate degree. Well, I had started out in the graduate program in the Chen lab here at UT. So that was kind of my last degree.
Yeah.
Biomedical nutrition. So,
Woo!
and so I still work in that. Yeah, but it was kind of a roundabout way to get back into that. But it's still rewarding. I still play music a lot too.
Yeah, heck of a life.
Yeah,
heck of a life. Is there anything in closing that you want our viewers to remember about either your time in Vietnam, the war as a whole, Memphis, anything you want us to leave us with?
Yes. My philosophy is that there's no substitute for experience, for actually doing something. You know, before I was even in the service, I was kind of hesitant because I wasn't sure like what was gonna happen. But since I was drafted, once I took my oath, it was all like, you know, you're in 100%. You know, you got, you know, you have to do whatever you're doing to the best of your ability, and do, you know, put everything into what you're doing. And so that's how I looked at it. And no matter what, how the chips fall, once you do that, you can be satisfied that you have done the best that you can do to your ability. Mm-hmm. And so I've done that. That's kind of how I've lived a philosophy of that way. So with the Memphis civil rights, all of that was, I tried to do what I could do my part in that. And even just growing up in community, I ran like community track. So I tried to do I was a sprinter, so I tried to do the best in that. Mm-hmm. I had a conflict. When you're a musician, you always have these sports conflicts, especially if you're academic. You can't you can't do sports and still be in the band, because it's you got to do the same time rehearsals, that's the band practice and so forth. So music was always a really strong thing for me. Yeah. So I've just kind of made that decision, but I still got to run some track later on, so which was good. And I think I ran in the Olympics, the Tennessee, as a senior, when I was in my 50s, when I finally I ran track in community and growing up in Memphis, but I didn't focus athletically on it, but I was still running, later. So I ran in the Senior Olympics when I was 50. I ran, so that was really fun, rewarding. I was still able to run 200 meter, 100 meter, sprinting. So yeah. So I did some medals in that, and then the science part of it is I always wanted to do something, to contribute something to help humanity. So I'm still working on that as we speak, So
that's amazing, an amazing story, and really appreciate you coming and sharing it with us. Thank you.
No, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. My wife Rosalind and my daughters Jennifer and Jessica and granddaughter Lisa, they have been supporting me in all these efforts that I've done, either musically or scientifically, and they are just a great family, and I appreciate them and all of my relatives. All right, thank you.